Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our fourth MusiCounts Learn Town Hall on the topic of music education and mental wellness. I'm so happy you're here because I think this is going to be an amazing conversation. My name is Nick Godso. I'm the manager of programs and education here at Team MusiCounts. And again, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this event. We started doing these town halls in response to the pandemic. Having national dialogue about issues and things that are relevant to music educators. We've had a couple town halls about how to respond to COVID and this need for us to teach remotely. We've had conversations about decolonizing music education in Canada. And tonight we're here to talk about music education and mental wellness, because the pandemic has obviously impacted all of our mental well-beings in some way or another. And even though the situation in terms of restrictions, in terms of what teaching music looks like from province to province, territory to territory, depending on where you are across Canada, we all have one thing in common, in that it's been almost a year of this. So the point of the conversation today is to really explore something that we all know. We all know that music has such a unique ability to support mental wellness, to help with stress, to help with anxiety. So how can music teachers leverage that to support their students' needs? And how can teachers leverage that to support their own mental wellness needs during this time? So for those of you who are watching and for those of you who are just joining us, please do introduce yourselves in the comments. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you teach, and maybe a little bit about what you're going through right now, if you'd like. I would also like to thank our sponsor for tonight, Hot Topic Foundation and Hot Topic. So the goal of Hot Topics Foundation is to change lives through increasing access to mental health programs and increasing access to music education. So it's so fitting that they're the sponsor for this event tonight. And we are so thankful, everyone here at MusiCounts is so thankful for the Hot Topic Foundation's ongoing support. This year, they have committed to offering MusiCounts $100,000 to support our Band-Aid program, which gives schools across Canada musical instruments so they can offer music education programs. And since 2016, the Hot Topic Foundation has given the MusiCounts Band-Aid program nearly $500,000. So this money through our Band-Aid program has quite literally enabled thousands of young people in dozens of schools across Canada to have access to music education. And that's not even an understatement at all. So thank you so much to everyone at Hot Topic and the Hot Topic Foundation for your ongoing support of the work that MusiCounts does. Before we go any further, I would like to begin by acknowledging the land. Obviously, we're all tuning in from different places across Canada, different spaces. So please take a moment to think about the land acknowledgement that makes the most sense for where you are situated. But given that MusiCounts is stationed in Toronto, we will be acknowledging the land of the Toronto area. So we recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the land in which MusiCounts operates. And we acknowledge their presence, or our presence, on this Indigenous territory that is now known as Toronto. And we also know that this land has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe people, the Chippewa people, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is now home to many Indigenous peoples, and we are acknowledging the current treaty holders of this land, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. So as we acknowledge this land, let us really reflect on and internalize its purpose. As music educators and as members of Canada's music education community, how can we bring a spirit of reconciliation into our work? How can we make this not just an acknowledgement, but action as well? And something else that I wanted to address before we meet our panelists is that this is a conversation about mental health and mental wellness. So that being said, it is imperative that we maintain a safe, open, and welcoming space here. People are going to be, our panelists are going to be vulnerable today. Some folks who are watching may be sharing experiences in the comments. So it's really important that we approach this with openness and positivity. So we'll be monitoring the comments. If there's anything that's harassing or negative, that won't be tolerated. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our fabulous panelists. I guess we can just quickly go through in the order in which I see everyone. So, Sarah Rose, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. What an absolute delight to be here. And thank you to Music Counts and Hot Topic Foundation and to Nick and your team for bringing us together. I'm Sarah Rose Black, and I'm a music therapist and registered psychotherapist at both the Princess Margaret Cancer Centre and Kensington Hospice in Toronto, Ontario.
Thanks, Sarah. And Kathy?
Hi, thank you, MusiCounts and Nick, for inviting us and organizing this event this evening. My name is Kathy Conway Ward, and I'm a music specialist here in St. John's, Newfoundland. I teach classroom music and choir at St. Matthew's School, K-7 in Cowan Heights in St. John's. And I'm also an oboe player. Please don't hold that against me.
I'm a tuba player. I can't say much.
Cool.
And Bina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nick, and to MusiCounts for inviting me. It's a real privilege to be here. My name is Bina John, and I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Music, University of Toronto. I studied piano performance at the University of Alberta, and then I did my PhD at U of T. My research mainly focuses around the relationship between music and psychosocial well-being.
Thanks, Bina. And Steve.
Hi, everyone. My name is Steve Holmberg. I am in beautiful British Columbia in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. We play music on the Nanaimo First Nations territory. I teach music here in the Nanaimo Ladysmith School District at Alt 68 Studios, which is part of our Learning Alternatives program. And we record music and we create and play stuff that the students here are into. And thanks to MusiCounts for putting this on.
Of course. Well, thank you all for being here. As you can all see, there's a lot of different perspectives. We have music researchers, music therapists, and music teachers here to talk about this topic. So again, I want to reemphasize that this is meant to be a pretty relaxed, organic dialogue. So for everyone who's watching at home, please feel free to share what you're going through in the comments, ask a question that comes up, because we're going to be bringing a lot of those into this conversation. So please do introduce yourself and ask questions as we go. So as I mentioned at the start, one part of this conversation is going to be devoted to how teachers can support their students' mental well-being with music, and then how teachers can support their own mental well-being with music. But before we do that, I thought it would be interesting to have each of the panelists share a bit of a story or experience that really encapsulates for them the relationship between music and wellness, just as a foundation to get the conversation started. Kathy, did you want to kick things off with this one?
Sure. Yes. So as I mentioned, I am an oboe player. And last March, when the world shut down, aside from school being closed, I lost quite a few gigs playing. I play in the Newfoundland Symphony Orchestra here in town, plus other ensembles. And so not being able to sit on stage in the middle of an orchestra and play music surprisingly took quite a toll on my mental well-being. To me, music is community, and getting to sit and play music with my friends it's really so good. So I did miss that a lot. We are very fortunate here. The administration of our orchestra were very committed to ensuring that we could return to the stage and perform safely, and spent months creating a plan so that the musicians could return to stage, and investigating new repertoire for smaller ensembles because there's a limited number of people who perform. So when in October, we finally got back together and we played some Handel's fireworks music. And even just to sit in amongst all these wonderful musicians and just to be able to play was food for the soul. It was amazing. Like, I can't even really describe, put into words, because it just felt so good. And to have that sense of community back again with my colleagues in the professional musicians and that sort of thing, just really wonderful. So that's something I really value, and to have that again really helped with my my well-being. So yeah.
That's amazing. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Bina, did you want to go next?
Sure. So in right before, once the pandemic was announced, I got a call from one of my colleagues, and he said, my friends are moving away for 6 years. Would you like to babysit this grand piano for 6 years? And I was like, I already had a piano, and I was like, well, if I got another piano, we'd probably lose our dining room and all of that. I had no idea how this piano would just get me through probably the lowest points in my life. So anyways, by the time I said yes, we were in lockdown, and we were having renovations done to our front porch and steps. So of course there's a big deal when the piano comes in, and all the construction workers are like, oh, this is really cool. And what ended up happening was, because we're in lockdown, right? So every week they would give me a list of songs that they really liked, and I would open the door and I would play, and we would just, really celebrate what their choices in music. And it just got me to, feel that I'm relating to someone. And what I do, as soon as I walk down my stairs every morning, I just look at this amazing piano, and I'm so thankful. And what I've started doing is I'll play something from my past, like when I was in university, and it reminds me of why I went into music in the first place. And then I try to learn something new, like a Bach fugue. And when I do that, I find that my whole, like my brain is alive, and my attention is so much better. I can focus much better. And I've been really experimenting with improvisation and just sitting at the piano and just enjoying this beautiful instrument. And I just read a research study from Glasgow yesterday, where they said that improvisation is probably one of the best ways to support mental health for professional musicians. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Bina. Steve, did you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. So, here at Learning Alt, it's an alternative learning program, and we do things a little bit differently and work with kids in a different way. So, in our program, we connect with a lot of vulnerable kids that have seen a lot of trauma, and there's a few students in particular that come into the studio. They write their own music, and it really helps them get through what they're dealing with. We have one student in particular who, we all know that music tells a story. It takes patience and time, but you have to be able to connect with other people to make it happen. And, she writes just a ton of music that kind of help her deal with her trauma and keep her, kind of with us today. So she's written a bunch of stuff. We're in the process of recording it, and it's just really good storytelling. And what she tells me is that music is her therapy, and I kind of feel that having an opportunity for our students to come to this space and record and create and deal with whatever they're dealing with is really feels good. It doesn't really feel like coming to work every day. It feels like connecting with people who really need that connection, and they need to share their message with the world. So yeah, I feel pretty lucky, and it's lots of fun.
That's awesome. Thanks, Steve. And Sarah Rose.
Sure. So those are all fantastic stories. I'm really moved to hear each of you share the power of music and different aspects of your experiences. I want to tell a story from the bedside, which is what I call some of my clinical music therapy work. And I work at a hospital where we are dealing with individuals who have had a cancer diagnosis. And I was working with this one amazing young man. He was in his 30s, and he knew that he had months left to live. And we had done some music therapy work together. He said, Sarah Rose, I used to play the sax like in high school, and this might be weird, but I would really love to just play the sax one more time. And do you think that could happen? And so pals at a local music store managed to make that happen and loaned us a saxophone. And for anyone who plays a wind instrument, I know there's many on this call who do, it takes a lot of abdominal strength and just support and lung capacity. And he was really sick, but I watched him like slowly, meticulously assemble this alto saxophone. And I think it took him 10 minutes just to piece it together. And he held it up to his mouth and he played 3 long, gorgeous notes. And he put the saxophone down and he said, "That's all I can do." But that was perfect.
Yeah.
And it moved me so much because I thought that's not about playing the instrument. That it is, but it's about identity. It's about connection. It's about expression. It's about just manifesting this piece of himself that was obviously very important to him. And I've never forgotten that, the visual of him holding that saxophone. So that was very much a teaching moment for me. So I feel very grateful to share that story today.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And thank you everyone for sharing those stories. It just exemplifies, like I said at the beginning, what we all know. Music is so powerful. And just hearing you each tell those stories about how it's kind of grounded you in this time or has really demonstrated to you why you do what you do every day. It's just so important and so powerful. So again, thank you for sharing. And with that, let's dive into our first core topic here. So supporting students' mental wellness with music. Obviously, this is a really trying time for students. Kids are dealing with unprecedented levels of mental strain, anxiety, and stress. So how can music teachers leverage the power of music that we all know is possible in a classroom setting, even if that classroom might not be in person? What if that classroom is virtual? Bina, did you want to start kicking off this part of the conversation?
Sure. So pre-pandemic, I teach a piano skills to undergrad students who are non-piano majors. So the level of stress is so high when they walk in the room because they basically have no piano skills and they have to get to a grade 6 by the end of the year. So I noticed that the performance anxiety was so much that they weren't learning anything. So I had to do something. So pre-pandemic, I stopped and just switched my whole class. So the first few minutes we would just breathe together. And then we would do mindfulness activities where we'd focus on which parts of the body you need to play the instrument. And this year, when we were in the pandemic, we thought we'd try like a Dalcroze activity. And I was really worried because these are undergraduate students, but we would ask them to improvise on the piano. It didn't matter what they were playing. And the rest of us would move to what they were playing. And they loved it. These undergrad students were just laughing as we looked really ridiculous moving around to these improvisations. But then when we sat down to play, the stress had just come all the way down. And then when I did start teaching the piano skills, what I did was I just told them that because it's the pandemic and we're all doing the best we can, 50% of your mark will be, I called it courage. If you show up on your Zoom call and you're here and you're present and you play something, you get 50%, and the rest of your mark will be to your musicality and accuracy. So I think reducing the stress level when you're marking, just making sure that the experience is good, and introducing a lot of activities that you don't worry about the grade. So I'm going to say improvisation a million times, but we did a lot of improvisation where there's no wrong answer. And so again, that got them engaged in the music and really reduced their stress levels. So that's my story.
That's awesome. Thanks, Bina. Anyone else have any other student activities that they've used with kids in the past that helps them, self-express, regulate emotion, anything like that they'd like to share?
Yeah, I got something, Nick.
Sure.
So, in our program here in Nanaimo at Learning Alt, the most fundamental thing that we try and work on is just to build connection with kids. And I found there's 2 things that really kind of underpin what we do here that seems to work. The first thing, of course, I believe is the environment that we do music in. So we're fortunate to have like a separate building that we're able to turn into a recording studio. And then with that, when the kids come in, I'll say, okay, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to play? And everything in the music room is about them. I don't really tell them, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Here's the music we're going to check out. I let them lead that. And at first they're a little bit surprised that we do that. But what ends up happening is they really express themselves in ways that matter to them. So I guess the first thing is kind of letting them choose the music. There's one student that kind of jokes with me, and he'll come in with a group of guys that he plays with, and I'll say to him, I'll say, okay, what do you guys want to do today? And he says, well, you're supposed to tell me, you're the teacher. And then we kind of laugh about it. And then, we kind of carry on from there. And then the second thing, letting them choose the content, but then the environment. So the studio, we've kind of turned into this space that it kind of helps. It just in some way diffuses tension. It diffuses anxiety. We're quiet in the morning. Some kids are working on academics and some composition. But they know it's a safe place where they can create. And if they want to just, sing a song, the big one this week, or has been for a while, is driver's license. So with some of our kids, I'll just say, okay, well, I'll play guitar, you can sing, or I can show you the chords. And they know that when they come here, they can express themselves in a safe way. They can tell their story. And then they can connect with others. And we're very fortunate, if there's a student who's working on something on this side of the studio, they can connect with any other student in the studio. We're not tied down to like a block system where there's this amount of kids. So it's really fluid and organic, and it's about them.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. A couple things there. I know, Kathy, last time we spoke, you were telling us about a really cool activity just to get students thinking about the ways in which music can help them identify their emotions and regulate that. Did you want to speak a little bit to that activity?
Sure. So I teach K to 7, so lots of little kids, and I use an activity called Four Corners, and I'm sure many of my colleagues who are on the call right now have used this in their classes. So of course emojis are really big now, and I put 4 signs throughout my classroom: a big happy face, love it; a regular smiley face, like it; one that's like a straight line that says meh; and then a frowny face that says not a fan. So I have a playlist of school appropriate music. Some of the songs I pick don't always go over well, but Miss Conway likes them, so it's okay. And then I'll play each of the songs, and they have to move to the corner, which best shows how they feel about the song. Sometimes I might do it where they have to move to the corner where they think the performer, what kind of emotion, or the songwriter was using in the song. But often I'll just say, okay, 4 corner emojis, and then they know. They ask for it a lot too. So lots of Taylor Swift on the playlist, by the way. Big fan.
And what emotion does that rouse?
Of course you put on Taylor Swift, miss.
That's awesome. Anything else in the line of activities that you do with young people, with students, that just kind of helps them understand that relationship between music and emotion? That anyone wanted to discuss, or Sarah Rose?
I'm happy to jump in. Yeah. My kind of first love is music education, and while I'm certainly not a teacher right now or in a classroom right now, I love the idea of music as a gift that we can give to each other, literally and figuratively. And so something I've done in music therapy teaching, and even when I'm gathered with a group of hospital staff and I'm running a wellness activity, I may get them to write down on a small piece of paper a song that means something very special to them. And it's completely anonymous. They write it down, fold it up. And what I do then, mix them all up, and I redistribute them to the group. And this becomes then a musical gift that you have received anonymously from somebody else. And you don't know who, and you don't know what the association is for that person. But you trust that there's something special about this song. And I think this can be adapted to all ages for, different reasons and different... with different intention. And I think it can work in a very profound way. I think it can work in a fun, maybe even a silly way. But this idea that you can give music to each other in a way that is caring.
Yeah, that's really special, Sarah. Thanks. I'm wondering if we can go back to something that Steve was talking about. I'm wondering if anyone else has any thoughts around this idea of the music class as a safe space. Speaking for myself, I remember when I was in high school, like that's where I would go. That's the space I would gravitate towards, where I felt most accepted and most comfortable. And that wasn't in COVID, when everyone's mental health is kind of particularly affected like it is now. So how are ways that safe space can be fostered potentially virtually, or if you're not virtual with all the restrictions, how can teachers maintain that space that we know is so important to students? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Kathy.
Steve. Or Kathy, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I did a lot of study during my graduate degree in restorative justice and relational teaching, and how building relationships really is such an important part of what we do as educators. And what Steve mentioned about creating safe space and picking music that students like really really appreciates where they're coming from and their stories as well, so um, kind of appreciating and understanding where a lot of our students are coming from really helps create that safe space.
Thanks, Kathy. Anyone
Yeah,
else
and I
have
think
any?
yeah, I think too with that, I have some kids that come into the studio, to do music, but what we end up doing sometimes is talking. And what I've realized in this gig and meeting these students, like if you can kind of sit down and just maybe not talk so much, but just listen. Some kids just need to be heard, and I really, really, kind of dig and believe in the recording process, because some of the stuff that I've recorded with some of our students, they'll say, okay, Steve, like, let's just record this, but I don't want to show it to anyone. I don't want anyone else to hear it except you and I, and we have a really great child and youth family support worker that works in here with me, Michelle Kroll. And just knowing that they can share those thoughts and emotions that, are sometimes a little dark, sometimes a little heavy, without the world hearing it, or knowing that I'm not gonna post it, is you start to really build that trust where you can dig deep with these kids and do some pretty powerful stuff. So
I think it's really, I'm building on Steve's point. I think it's really important to check in with your students before you even start your class. So I always like, how's it going? How was your day? Is there anything that you're worried about? Like spending at least 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however long to check in with the students. And before I dismiss them, same thing, always, was everything okay? Is there anything that you're worried about? But just, that's non-musical, but just showing that this is a space where you can bring your worries and your fears. And this is a safe place to express that.
mm-hmm.
I just wanted to add, I think it's no coincidence and it's extremely special that music classrooms are often the safest spaces for so many reasons. And that has a lot to do with music itself, but also the teachers that create the space. So just hats off truly to the music that we teach, but also the people behind the music that gets taught. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah Rose. And thank you, teachers. We know it's been a year.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that? Something else that I wanted to bring up is, how should music teachers navigate, talking with a student who is really going through, a serious mental health concern. If a student is really in crisis, and oftentimes, like you were saying, Sarah Rose, it is the music teacher who might be that kids, safest person to go to. How should music teachers handle that? Or do any of you have any perspective on that you'd like to share?
Well,
I'm
I don't.
happy to speak. Sorry.
No, go, Sarah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Just a quick thought, and then Steve, I'd love to hear your perspective. I think to your point, actually, each of you have touched on this. Listening is so integral, and I think that often it's important for us to know our own scope of practice first and foremost. That we can do what we can do, and we're not necessarily social workers. We're not necessarily therapists. For me, I have to know my own scope of practice, even with a patient. Where do I kind of fit in? But the listening piece, I keep coming back to, whether it's in an education setting or in a therapy setting, often that is the most important thing we can do, and we can all do it. We can all listen, and listening well and listening carefully and intentionally. And I think if a student knows that they can come to you and they will be heard and they will be listened to, I think that's vital. I know it really depends on who the resources are in your community or in your circle, and knowing that your school has a social worker or a guidance counselor or a caseworker, knowing then who to kind of team up with if that's appropriate. But, stepping back a bit, I think listening, it comes down to listening in such a profound way. Sorry, Steve, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah Rose. Yeah, and that's just it. And really, there's two things. So the more you listen, the more you really get to know the kid. It's very, very difficult if you're a high school teacher and you see, 30 kids every 80 minutes and you got 400 kids on your roster to really get to know them. And that's a huge challenge. So, listening, and then, if you can really get dialed into knowing the kid, you'll get a sense of where they're at emotionally and what is really going on. And then, to echo what Sarah Rose has, you look at your scope of practice. We are so, in the Nanaimo Ladysmith School District, we have amazing supports and student support teachers and special ed teachers and child and youth family support workers that, I never feel that I'm kind of left alone with an issue. There's so much support right from the teacher beside me to my principal to senior management. So I think it's just, doing what you can do and then getting support from others to support those kids. Not to simplify it, but I think that's an approach, listen, learn, and then ask for help.
Anyone have anything they'd like to follow up on that?
I do. We talk a lot about social emotional learning here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I don't know, it's becoming part of our curriculum. Well, it always has been, but we're just kind of putting, I guess, labels on it. I don't want to say that, but so basically that is meeting the needs of our students. And I think to what the other panelists have said, we can use music to meet these needs, and it just falls so in line with the relationships within yourself and with other people. It's just fabulous.
Thanks, Kathy. Anything else on that? One question that was submitted by a teacher in advance of this was, what can music teachers take from music therapy principles to apply to everyday classroom experiences? So Sarah Rose, I'm not sure if that's something that you wanted to speak to, or if one of the classroom, or if anyone else wanted to speak to that.
I'm happy to, and if anyone wants to jump in, if anyone's had experiences of the intersections of, music therapy as a health practice and music education, feel free. So I think actually it does come down to looking at music as a health behavior. And so often when I see different approaches to music education, I think music and health is built into how teachers interact with their students. I think it's fundamental to how we use music. But I think it can be explicit too. We can talk about music as a health behavior. Music listening is healthy because it helps us regulate our emotions. Music sharing is healthy because it creates a sense of connection and community, whether virtual or in person. Music performance enhances social connectivity and building of relationships, which we know is good for our health. So actually labeling music as a health behavior, I would encourage music educators to feel free to tap into that kind of jargon. Music as empathy. Music itself
Yeah.
is so empathic. Using these, again, to Kathy's point, social emotional language, drawing from what it means to be a human and connect with others. Music is such a big part of that. So allowing that to infuse your pedagogy, I think, is really important.
Bina, did you have anything to add to that? It looked like you.
Yes, plenty. I do actually. So
Okay, good.
that was beautiful. But we know that music nourishes emotions, and the whole point that with children, they classify emotions and emotionally relevant relationships before they classify anything physical. So the first thing they do is emotionally connect with the music, and of course with the people who are producing the music with. And to the point about social emotional learning, we know that social connectedness and self-regulation are integral to well-being. So you put the two together and it's a perfect fit, where you're addressing the emotional, the needs, but you're also emphasizing the whole idea of connectedness and affirming. Music affirms who we are. Music, there's nothing better than music than to connect us with each other.
Absolutely. Anything else on that before we move on? Just a reminder to everyone who's watching, ask questions, comments, stories, anything you want. We're going to try and bring some of this in later, so get your questions in now so we can bring those in at the end. But for now, let's move on to our next topic, which is how can teachers support their own mental wellness? It's unfortunate because I feel like amidst everything that teachers have been kind of put through, it feels like this has just been kind of left out of the conversation. So now teachers, I feel, are kind of in this position of having to advocate for themselves, advocate for their own mental wellness needs, when they're kind of tasked with doing everything and then some to keep music class happening for their students in these wild circumstances. So Kathy, I don't know if you wanted to start by sharing anything on this topic.
Well, I think as music educators and as teachers in general, it's a very emotional profession because even our previous comments we talk about building relationships and feelings and emotions and how we can support students' emotional and social learning, and that's always it's a difficult job even before the pandemic. But it feels like since all of this has been happening, the needs of teachers has been left off of the. We're not talking about it, like Nick said, and you can't pour from an empty cup. We have our own stressors besides teaching in our own classroom and our own jobs. We have families and other things that we are also dealing with, plus the needs of so many other children, and it can be very stressful. And I think that we need to talk about that more as educators because we're not superhuman and we have a lot of responsibility. So we have to be there for each other. So, yeah.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah. Any other kind of general thoughts on that in response to Kathy that someone would like to share?
I think it's important to acknowledge the loss that we're feeling and that we are all going through a grieving process. We have lost a family, we have lost so many things, we've lost our identity. So just acknowledging the grief and the loss that we're experiencing, I think it's really important. And the whole idea of self-care, be kind to yourself. You don't have to be the super music teacher, the superhero. If you're doing the best you can, that's amazing. But just looking after yourself and being kind to yourself and acknowledging the limitations of what we have. And, we're all trying to do our best.
Thanks, Bina.
I think too that my principal has told me countless times. He said, Steve, if you want to try something and you crash and burn, we'll be right there to pick you up. So knowing, that you have the support from colleagues and administrators and your district, this is not an easy time that we're in. I think that speaks volumes. The other thing too, if you're a music teacher and you're a musician, playing music whenever and wherever you can, it has really helped me. And I know that, we haven't been able to rehearse as groups and stuff, but, during COVID, my daughters, I have two young daughters, and they love a bunch of music that has piano in it. So I thought, okay, I'll just learn to play the piano. So, that for me was a little bit of kind of wellness, because I was doing something different. I was trying to stay current. And it just kind of made me really focus on the tune I was working on and the sound of it. So, and just, yeah, I mean, in this job recording students, I've had to learn a lot of different stuff. I've had to stay current with, a lot of different music, and it kind of keeps things fresh and new and exciting. So, if you play, and if you hear a tune on the radio that you don't dig, maybe check it out again, and it might inspire you later. I don't know.
And to go off that, Steve, I know that something that probably most people who are professional musicians, who have studied music, like all of us have, is this idea of music burnout. I remember sometimes when I was in my undergrad, I love music, but sometimes the idea of playing my tuba just made me so anxious and stressed, and I felt like my relationship with music at times was kind of pushed to the limit. And I feel like that's probably something a lot of music teachers are going through right now, is that there's something that's so special, something that's so joyful for them, maybe being pushed to the limit. So what are some things that teachers can keep in mind if that's something that they're going through or struggling with?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's an amazing producer named Greg Wells, who's worked with everyone from Shania Twain to 21 Pilots, Dua Lipa. And I just watched a great session with him on a recording website. And, he said that when he got into the music business, he had no idea that he would be a recording engineer and a producer and go off in that aspect. So I would say, I don't know, like if you're getting this kind of music burnout and you're sick and tired of music, and you maybe just a pivot to something a little bit differently. I mean, for me, I haven't really played a ton of music since COVID, but I've really, really like jumped down the rabbit hole with recording and engineering. And, and then I get to do that with the students here. So I just don't stop. I go home, I watch tutorials about it. I'm on all these great websites. So it's just that pivot into something a little bit different to do with music, maybe. It's such a broad field. That I found that's really kind of helped me.
Cool. Thanks, Steve. And Sarah Rose, I'm keen to get your perspective on this as well. I know last time we spoke, you were saying something really beautiful about how music can just always be a friend. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that here.
Sure. Yeah, I love, Steve, what you said about that sort of gentle pivot and allowing music to play a slightly different role. And I think the beauty of the role of music in human experience is that it is a friend that is non-judgmental and always present and is always available to come back to. It's this sort of undercurrent that never goes away. And this idea of music as a friend that understands us when maybe other people or other aspects of our experience don't align with what we're going through. I know that in music therapy, it's often difficult to keep that spark alive when you're playing music all day and it's always other people's music, which is beautiful and amazing. I wouldn't trade it. But when I come home, I kind of don't feel like playing music or listening to music. And this isn't every day, but an idea I've been exploring in myself and with my music therapy students is knowing your why, WHY, knowing your why. Why did you find yourself in the profession in the first place? What inspired you to go down this road to begin with? Where did it all begin? And I've been exploring that a bit for myself and with other colleagues. And it's amazing what happens when you put yourself back there, whether it was high school or undergrad or as a kid or as an adult, whatever the case. Know your why and revisit it and allow that to be a source of joy.
Thanks, Sarah Rose. I have a question that I want to bring in from someone who's watching. They say, how can we deal with the pressure of feeling we always have to be fun or positive for our students, even when times are really tough for all of us? Does anyone have anything they'd like to share on that?
So in Toronto, everyone, the kids are in homeroom classes. The music teacher has to walk around with a cart. The children can't sing, they can't play, they're sitting at their desks. And one of my students who was a music teacher said, she just walked into class one day and it was a lovely day. And she said, we're going outside. We're all tired. And you and I know we're not making music. So she just took them outside and they played music games outside. So I think it's okay to just step away from, again, knowing your limitations, know that this is not a true music class, and do something that's completely out of the box and not even musical. But I think that would help with that kind of the heaviness that we have when we realize we're not allowed to do what we truly love.
Any other responses to that before we move on? We have another question here. I want to give time for you guys to respond if there's anything else. No? So Crystal asks, how can we support our colleagues going through a challenging time? Any ideas for whole staff wellness? So I guess, morale for teacher teams as a whole, and how can that be advocated for and celebrated?
Whole staff wellness?
Yeah.
So, the staff at my school is very, it's like a family. And just even like my administration will send out little notes of thank you to individual teachers. And I got one this afternoon about a class that I taught for my pervasive kids. And, just even like, hey, she popped in and my principal, and just kind of watched as it was all going down. And then she just sent me a text, that was really fun. Even though, I've been struggling with this because we just moved online teaching after being in person for the last 6 months, and everybody's struggling, but my colleagues will recognize when another teacher is really trying. And so we had that support that way as well. I know as a music, one teacher, music teachers are often the only music teacher in the building. So we are very special here in Newfoundland that we have this wonderful collegial network of music teachers. Everybody knows everybody else. And I sat in on a couple of virtual coffee breaks with colleagues, and we're just sharing ideas with each other. Like, this has worked for me. This is, do you have anything cool for grade 6? And that really takes a lot of the stress off. Also, you get to know your colleagues a bit better and what they're into and that sort of thing. So that has helped me a lot, I must say.
Yeah, and I think it's the whole kind of team of colleagues that you need to kind of lean on. And we have a great principal here at Learning Alt, and he's kind of tasked me with, at the beginning of each staff meeting, we do a little music trivia thing. And it seems like kind of such a minuscule thing to do, but it really kind of unites the staff because we're kind of two separate sites. So we get on Teams and we do a little music trivia, and you get to know your staff a little bit better, and you start telling stories about different music things. And And, he constantly reminds us, just, you guys are doing a great job, and do the best you can. And here's how we can support kids the best. And so I think the wellness piece, when you work as a team of educators, it's kind of, everyone kind of has to have everyone's back, and they'll pick you up when you fall down, and dust you off, and you just keep going. We'll get through it.
Sarah Rose, I know earlier you mentioned doing like wellness activities with colleagues at some of the hospitals that you work with. Is there anything there that might translate well to communities of educators in a school in these times? Or
Yeah, definitely. I do think about, song sharing and also resource sharing. The gratitude acknowledgement, Kathy, that you spoke of, and Steve, just leaning on, the entire, we call it the interdisciplinary team in the hospital. I feel like I wouldn't be able to do the work I do without support from all sides. Something recent, though, and I know this is an in-person thing, but I think it can also be virtual. We started this on the palliative care floor at the hospital where I work. It's a journal. It's a physical journal, and people write anonymously, I'm grateful for whatever the case. And I was so blown away. We don't know who's writing what. We can guess with handwriting, but honestly, I mean, it's such a beautiful experience. You don't really think about the individual people. You're reading these comments, and one person wrote, I am grateful for you. You're reading this right now, and I want you to know I'm grateful for the work you do and how hard it is. And it was so moving. And I wonder if there's a virtual option to anonymously share gratitude. So, Kathy, picking up on what you said, I think knowing you're not alone, knowing that there's support, and taking an active approach in addressing that or acknowledging that. And certainly, yes, gathering. I mean, we're all zoomed out, but off hours, and maybe doing like a trivia night, for example, that's, not related to music at all. Or maybe it's totally related to music, but something I think fun and easy and just no pressure can be so great right now.
Mm-hmm.
anything else on that? Have another question here that kind of goes back more to what we were talking about earlier. How can we make music and mental wellness more front and center in our arts curriculum? Any perspectives or ideas on that?
I think the music that you play, the repertoire choices should be full of social and emotional content. And it's not as important as to how well they perform, but choose songs that have deep emotional meaning and deep emotional content. So you could say the song is about dying. Has anyone suffered a loss in their lives? How did that make you feel? Or does this music sound scary? What are the things that you're scared about? Or this music is about friends. Can you talk about your friends? So taking the emotional content of the song and the rich emotional content, and purposefully having discussions about that, so they can begin to speak about their emotions, or how does this make you feel, or have you experienced this situation, that sort of thing. So I think if the repertoire is focused, you're purposely and intentionally choosing social and emotional content, and it's emotionally rich, I think you can go a long ways by connecting to your students emotionally and socially.
Yeah, and I just love what Bina said about that, because there's this notion that if kids are listening to really kind of dark music, that they might be doing something dark, right? But every kid I talk to at all, they'll bring in a tune that's kind of really dark and brooding, and I kind of say, are you okay? What's going on? And they're like, well, no, I'm fine. This is just how I relate to this song, and it doesn't mean I'm going to self-harm or anything's going to happen. This is just what is getting me through. I mean, it's like when I used to listen to Metallica when I was younger, my parents probably thought that I was going to get all crazy and do, but I just needed to get that aggression out in a musical way. So don't kind of be shy or apprehensive about touching on those dark subjects or those deep subjects like that we've said. Yeah. So you know.
Thanks, Steve. Anything else on that? I thought it might be nice for us to kind of end by talking about the fact that, obviously COVID has taken so much from us. It's taken our ability to make music in groups and the amazing feelings that come with that. It's taken the ability for us to see our friends and our family whenever we want to. But moving forward, as educators, as musicians, as music therapists, is there anything that you will take from COVID that will positively impact you on the other side of this? Is there anything that will kind of, like a lesson that you've learned or something that you're just going to be taking away and moving forward with that will be more positive in the long run? There's got to be something.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go.
Thanks.
So two things. I have an amazing family, and we've spent tons and tons of time together over COVID. And, I enjoy and I love them even more. So, that's kind of the piece, if we're with our kind of close knit family all the time, that's a special thing. COVID has kind of, I've had to kind of slow down and do less, but spend more quality time with family and friends in different ways. The second thing that it's done for me is it's forced me to pivot and think a little bit differently about what I do in the music room, because we can't have large groups together. So and that, I'm not saying that there's a good side to COVID, but that pivot has really expanded my practice, taught me to really understand the students that I work with more, and to help them create the music that they really value. So the simple pivot, and then spending tons of time with the ones that we love.
Amazing. Thanks, Steve. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, maybe that's a good place to wrap things up then. So thank you to our amazing panelists for donating your expertise tonight. It's truly, remarkable to be witness to the richness of the conversation tonight. I thought it was really productive. I thought that there was so many great ideas and so many really unique and fascinating perspectives shared. So thank you all so much. I hope that everyone who's watching had as much fun as I did. I also just want to put a shout out to all the teachers out there again. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, for everything that you do every day to make COVID happier and better for your students through music. That's what you're doing every day, and that impact does not go unnoticed. So thank you from everyone here at MusiCounts, the Juno Awards. I'm sure I speak for the panelists. And just another note, we want to continue having these MusiCounts Learn Town Halls, and we want to have them on topics that are meaningful and relevant to you. So if you have an idea for a topic that you'd like to see us put together an event for, send me an email. My email is nick@musicounts.ca. If you have an idea, send it my way. If you, if in your teaching you feel like there's a gap in terms of resources that are available to you, let us know as well, because MusiCounts Learn is also going to be putting out several different resources and new programs and stuff like that over the next few months, but we're going to continue to build on that. So stay tuned for what we have coming down the pipes. We have some really exciting stuff coming in the next few weeks. But if you have ideas for other projects that you think would be good for us to explore taking on, let me know, because that's why we're here. We're here to create this new content to support you so you can keep doing the amazing work that you're doing. You can sign up to our newsletter if you feel like it. We're going to post a link to that in our comments so you can stay abreast on all of the MusiCounts happenings. And yeah, thank you again to the Hot Topic Foundation for your ongoing generosity, continuing to make music education happen, even in these most difficult of times. And anyway, I hope you all have a great night. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and I'll see you all very soon. See you, folks.